Take the Sedarit for the Community and Enterprise Resources Committee of 12 August 2025. We have present in the meeting Councillors Anderson, Barker. Councillor Brogan's having IT issues at the moment, so he will be joining. We have present Councillors Brown. We have apologies from Councillor Carmichael, and I have been advised that Councillor Faulkner is substituting. Councillor Faulkner, can you confirm that, please? Councillor Faulkner, can you request to speak, please? Well, we'll send him a message and clarify that. We also have present Councillors Convery, Cowan, Cowie, Devlin, Dewar. We have apologies from Councillor Fagan. We have apologies from Councillor Ferguson Miller and Councillor Clark substituting. We have present Councillors Gowland. We have, I'm just checking if Councillor Horn is in the meeting. We don't have Councillor Horn. We have present Councillor Johnson Dempsey. And I'll check Susan Kerr. We don't have Councillor Kerr in meeting. And we have present Councillors Lennon, Lockhart, Hugh MacDonald, McCallan, McCreary, McLachlan, Nugent, Robb, Toner and Watson. And I'll hand back to the Chair. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tracy. After that undistinguished start to the meeting, on the tactical aspects, can I welcome everyone to the meeting? And can I ask under item 1 for any declaration of interests? Don't see any declaration of interests. Item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 12. First of all, as a correct record of the meeting, can I ask for approval of the minute? That's approved. Thank you very much. Just on one item arising from that, item 2, we talked about the Burgundy bin permits at the last meeting. I wonder perhaps if I can ask Kevin to give us an update on how that one's progressing.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question. So, live position as of today is garden waste permits are now 39,250. So, an increase of 6,000 since we last, 9,000, sorry, since we last reported to committee. So, the bulk of that, obviously, the uptake was ahead of the summer season, but we're still continuing to see people sign up to the service over the summer period. But that's obviously evening out. In terms of the recruitment process, we've had new starts over recent weeks, but given the scale of the service, recruitments continue given the turnover. So whilst we've got new starts over recent weeks, we're continuing to recruit as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Just I thought that would be of interest to the committee just to know how we're getting along on that one. Councillor Anderson.
I thought we were going to get a full report brought to this committee on that, rather than just a verbal update. A full report would allow us to scrutinise it better, and also at the end it could be amended. So I'm wondering, could we have a full report on the whole thing? Because it wasn't just about the £45 charges. People who voted for this voted for a whole host of other things, which don't seem to be happening. So could I request that we have a full written report at the next meeting regarding this item?
I think this is a question of timing, as always intended to be the case. Kevin, can you advise us what's going to happen on that?
Thanks, Chair. When we introduced the service, we planned it over a 2-year period. So, you know, this year we're ahead of target in terms of the uptake, but we're planning an increased uptake again. We're hoping for an increased uptake for next year, and again some comms over winter. So for us, we were viewing it as a 2-year project and a 2-year process. So maybe more appropriate to come at a later date with a full update.
Yes, I would have thought that as well, to be quite honest, John. I would have thought it was appropriate perhaps at the end of the first year or something of that sort, once we've got a full timing through there.
As I've said before, Chair, there was more in that paper than the £45 charge. There was other items in there, like the rollout of the bins in the rural areas. I think it was yourself that said to avoid a 2-tier system, where the urban areas had the burgundy bin, but the rurals didn't. There's a whole host in there, and I just think a written report now, well, it's fine to say there's 39,000 whatever paying the £45, but there's other items in there, and I think coming the end of the year is a bit late. So I would request a written report, even an interim written report on that item.
Yeah, okay, we're happy to do that. I think it's probably unnecessary at this point, but we'll do something. Can we do that for the next meeting? Okay, we'll take that up for the next meeting, John.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Convery, Jerry.
I just want to know what he was talking about. And he's saying things weren't happening, so he's explained what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we've approved that minute. Can I move on to item 3, which is the Community and Enterprise Budget Monitoring Statement 24-25, pages 13 to 22. Could I invite Louise Harvey to speak to that report?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. This is the first of 2 reports committee today on the revenue budget. The first is the final revenue report for the financial year 24-25, and this covers the revenue budget position for the period 1st of April through to the 31st of March. And the second we'll pick up next is for the new financial year 25-26 at period 2 of the new financial year, which is the 16th of April. In terms of the current report, paragraph 5 on page 13 contains the main financial implications of the report, and paragraph 5.1 outlines the final year-end position as an underspend of 617,000 before the approved transfers to reserves, and a balanced budget position for the resource after the approved transfers to reserves. And this position has been reported and approved as part of the Council's final overall outturn position, and this was at Executive Committee on the 25th of June. The position is noted in the appendices and is an improved position from the probable outturn exercise. The approved reserves are also noted at the bottom of the appendices, relevant to each of the heads of service areas, and include the transfers to reserves for storm costs, play equipment reserve, the carry forward of the community fight back fund balance, and the planned contributions for the fleet services in line with the probable outturn. As it's the year-end report, there's a few variances just to highlight, and these are reported in the Appendix A and also through the services position as well. So we are seeing underspends in our staffing across all the services due to turnover and vacancies. We do have underspends in supplies and services due to less spend on materials within the construction unit, but this was offset by the cost of food within our facility service and also the cost of bins within our waste service. We've got overspends due to property costs, including rates, cleaning and janitorial costs, repairs and maintenance for our depots, and electrical power for electric vehicles. We've also got to highlight overspends in transport in our roads and fleet due to fuel and casual hire costs, the cost of outside repairs and general materials and spares, etc. But this is offset by less leasing and casual hire costs within grounds. Other main points to highlight within our payments to contractors, we're reflecting the costs for crematorium upgrade. We've had lower demand for our pest control service and dog kennelling costs, and also the carry forward I mentioned on the Community Fight Back Fund. Within roads, we've got costs in relation to bridge repairs, statutory inspections, our winter maintenance programme, and also payments to the construction unit for lighting and routine maintenance. So quite a lot of overs and unders there, but overall balance given it's the year-end position. Within our income, we're also reporting an under-recovery of income due to the bereavement service, school meals income, care of gardens, street lighting requests, parking income and income from EVs, including the fleet and also the fleet management fee. But these are offset by over-recoveries in terms of waste clearances, planning applications and building standards applications, rental income and routine maintenance within fleet and roads area income. So all the cost pressures that we've highlighted across the year in terms of our revenue budget reporting has been managed within this position in line with the projections, and overall the reported position is broadly aligned to the probable outturn. We've got the standard budget environments, and these are proposed to set out the bottom of each of the appendices, and these reflect budget movements in Community and Enterprises budget since we last reported, and also some year-end accounting transactions that are required as part of our accounts presentation at year-end. So we're establishing budget to reflect year-end accounting requirements. We've also got carry forwards of committed budget for the Strategic Waste Fund and strategic investments, and we do have areas of realignment within the resource to reflect how we've delivered our services. So if I can refer committee back to paragraph 2, the committee is asked to approve the following recommendations: that the Community and Enterprise budget position for 24-25 through to the 31st of March is a break-even revenue budget position after the approved transfers to reserves, and also that the proposed budget environments be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Louise. Any questions on that report? It does have a certain sense of déjà vu about it, doesn't it? No questions. Can I move the report?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Can I move on to item 4, which is the Revenue Budget Monitoring Statement 25-26, pages 23 to 32. And again, back to Louise to report
thank
on
you.
that, please.
So second report, as I've said, for today, and this is the first report for committee for the new financial year, and this covers the period from the 1st of April through to the 16th of May, which is period 2 of our financial year. So in the main financial implications, again on paragraph 5.1 on page 23, the resource is projecting an outturn for the 25-26 financial year of a break-even balanced budget position, and this is an early position given its reporting to the 16th of May. Variance explanations are outlined in the appendices B through to F for each of the services, and in the main the underspends are around employee costs, and these are supporting property costs, again around the cleaning and janitorial costs of depots and some rates, and we also have some projected overspends in relation to supplies and services, mostly around IT costs. We do have a projected under recovery again in our bereavement income, our school meal income, parking income and income from EV charging. We do have budget environments, and these again are set out at the bottom of the appendices, and they reflect the movements in the budget from the 1st of April through to the 16th of May, and these really just establish the new year budgets in most of the cases. So again, budget realignment in terms of how we delivered our service and how we've established our budget at the start of the year. Transfer of temporary budgets for expenditure commitments, mostly around investment monies and our business support side, and also the creation of budget to reflect external income that we've received within the resource. So that's for employability and also the shared prosperity fund. So we can refer committee back again to paragraph 2. The committee is asked to approve that the forecast to the 31st of March 26 is a break-even position for the community and enterprise revenue budget, and that's detailed in Appendix A, and also the proposed budget environments at period 2 are approved.
Thanks very much, Louise. Any questions on that report? I don't see any. Can I therefore move the report?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That report's approved. Moving to item 5, the Capital Budget Monitoring Statement 24-25, pages 33 to 38. Can I invite Graham Booth to speak to that report? Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Item 5 is the final Capital Budget Monitoring Report for financial year 2024-25, and the purpose of the report is to advise committee of the spend for the year up to 31st of March. The resources spend was included in the overall position reported to the Executive Committee back in June. Section 3 gives the background and explains the budget position for the year, which was a total budget of £47.364 million, and that budget was unchanged since we last reported to the Community and Enterprise Resources Committee in May this year. Section 5 as normal details the financial implications, and at section 5.1 we're noting the total programme for the year of £47.364 million, with the final spend position for the year of £35.448 million. And as noted in section 5.2, the underspend of £11.9 million reflects the profile of spend across a number of projects, including within the multi-project and multi-year programme Leisure and Culture Transformation Fund, where spend will be recorded in the new financial year. In addition, for the City Dale Green Hills Road project, there is ongoing maintenance spend that will be incurred in future financial years, and in relation to the Hamilton Town Centre Master Plan, spend has now been aligned with the allocated investment funding. Overall, the programme underspend reflects the timing of spend across the financial years, and the main projects responsible for the overall underspend are detailed in Appendix B. And this appendix provides a list of continuing projects into 2025-26, along with their estimated completion dates. At section 5.5, we're noting as normal that any underspends on the projects, along with the funding, will carry forward into next financial year as required, and an update on the New Year programme is detailed in a separate report to the committee that I'll take you through shortly. At section 5.6, as usual at this point in time, we're explaining the year-end and accounting adjustments we make to the capital programme to ensure the treatment of spend complies with accounting regulations. And that has no physical impact on projects, with it being an accounting entry only, and it's to make sure spend is categorised correctly between revenue and capital. And we're noting then that £8.423 million of capital spend is required to be recorded as revenue spend, and that means for the purposes of publishing our annual accounts, there's capital spend of just over £27 million. I would refer committee back to the recommendation in section 2 of the report and ask that the Community and Enterprise Resources capital budget of £47.364 million and final spend for the year of £35.448 million be noted. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any questions on that report? I don't see any. Can I move the report?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That report's approved. Moving on to item 6, the Capital Budget Monitoring Programme, 25-26, pages 38 to 42, 39 to 42. And again, I invite Graham Booth to speak to that report.
Thank you, Chair. Moving into the new year then, again the standard capital budget monitoring report and the first for financial year 25-26. And this reflects the budget and spend position to the 16th of May 2025, which is our accounting period 2. Section 3 gives the background to the report and explains the budget reflects the capital programme for the new year as reported to the Executive Committee at its meeting back in June. And Section 5 outlines the financial implications. Section 5.1, we're noting that the resources total capital programme for the year is 50.793 million. And this budget is based on the original programme of projects approved back in February, and this has been updated to include budget carried forward from 2024-25 and adjustments to the programme approved at the Executive Committee on 25th of June. These adjustments totalled a net increase of 3.118 million, and they are shown at the bottom of Appendix A on page 41. These adjustments include the City Deal funding element of the Hairmyres Station Park and Ride project, the SPT award for the Lanark Interchange and Park and Ride works, and also the transfer of budget from the battery storage project at Eastfield Lifestyles to the sauna and steam room refurbishment and to retain the overall allocation within the Eastfield Lifestyle site. Based on current information, the budget of 50.793 million also reflects the estimated level of spend which will be achieved in 25-26. And as noted in section 5.3, Appendix A is noting the full forecast spend for the year, and for information also notes the actual spend incurred up to the 16th of May of 181,000. I would then refer committee back to the recommendation in section 2 of the report that the Community and Enterprise Resources capital budget for 25-26 of 50.793 million and expenditure to date of 181,000 be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Graham. Any questions on that report? I don't see any questions. Can I therefore move the report?
I'll second it.
That report's approved. Moving on to item 7, the Workforce Monitoring Statement, 1st of March to 31st of May, pages 43 to 50. Can I invite Elaine Maxwell to speak to that report? Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is a standard workforce monitoring report, which you're familiar with, and I'll provide you with an update on the employment information for the resource and covers the period from the 1st of March to the 31st of May this year. Section 4.1 outlines the absence statistics, and obviously we're going back a couple of months now, and reports on the figures for May, which you'll see were 6.6%. And that was the same as the previous month that was reported. As always, when we look back at the May of the previous year, you'll see that the figure has increased by 0.7%, and the current May figure of 2025 is 1% higher than the council-wide figure. Again, as we always do, we look at the figures that are reported at that month, and we do a projection and look at what the projected annual average will be for the resource. And for the year 25-26, it's projected to be 6.7% compared to a council-wide average of 6%. You'll see, though, at Appendix 1, because the reporting period here covers the end of one financial year and 2 months of the new financial year, the average for the resource for 24-25 is 6.6%. Moving then on to section 4.2, which outlines the occupational health information, which is found in Appendix 2. You can see that there were 329 occupational health referrals made during this period, with an increase of 9 compared to the same period of last year. And again, when you look at Appendix 2, you'll see that that increase, there's been a bit of an increase in occupational health reports and medicals, and a decrease of physio, but overall an increase. Section 4.3 then outlines, shows the number of accidents and incidents that were reported during this period, and you'll see that there were 34 recorded. And again, when we look at the previous year, you'll see that that's a reduction of 15 in comparison to the same period last year. Section 4.4 goes on to outline the employee relations activity within the resource, and you'll see that there were 39 disciplinary hearings held. Obviously, that is a wee bit of an increase in compared to the same period of last year, but you will know that obviously in terms of measuring that, that's quite difficult because employee relations activity is in response to behaviours or conduct in line with council's policies and procedures. So, you know, the personnel team and the resources work hard to make sure that these are being followed appropriately. There were also 3 grievances submitted and 1 dignity at work complaint submitted during that period. Section 4.5 then goes on to look at the analysis of leavers, and we can see that's detailed in Appendix 2A and shows that there were 30 leavers during this period eligible for an exit interview. Section 5 then looks at the staffing watch information, and again, just because of the time of the reporting, obviously we have to report the figures that were, you know, during this reporting period. So it is going back to the staffing watch information at March, and you'll see that there was a decrease of employees of 36 employees between the December 24 and the March 25 figure. And with that, I would refer committee back to Section 2 within the report and ask you to approve the recommendation to note the employment information for the period the 1st of March to the 31st of May 2025. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Can I ask for any questions, and can I go to Councillor Kirsten Robb? Kirsten.
Thank you. Thanks, Elaine. I noticed in the earlier reports that quite a few of the underspends are due to the vacancies in different services. I wonder if in a future meeting we could request a report to go into a wee bit more detail on that, give a snapshot of where the vacancies are and what steps are being taken to maybe grow more of our own or modern apprenticeships or something to try and fill those gaps, because obviously those have an impact on the existing staff as well, increasing pressures and so on. Thank you.
Well, actually, the next committee, we will be bringing the resource workforce plan, which will outline, you know, a number of the activities that we're looking at in terms of grow your own, so that graduate apprenticeship, etc. So that hopefully will update that position for you. I'm happy to give an update on recruitment information. The concern that I do have is that it's only valid at the day and point in time that you're reporting it, and obviously with our lead-in timescales for committee, my concern would be that it would be quite out of date by the time we actually got here. So that would be my only concern. I could certainly look to see what information we could provide, but just with that caveat, because it's a moving picture every day, every hour of the day, in terms of where we are with recruitment.
Thanks very much. I think we need to keep a strategic view on this. I think that's an appropriate way of looking at it at the next meeting, if that's suitable. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any. Can I therefore move the report?
I'll second it.
And that report is approved. Item 8 is the Resource Plans Quarter 4 Progress Report 24-25, pages 51 to 94. And this is Alison Brown to speak to this one. Alison.
Thank you and good afternoon. This report provides the Q4 progress report for the resource plan for 24-25. The resource plan follows the agreed corporate structure and style and is a key element of the Council's performance management arrangements. Progress against all resource plan measures is contained in Appendix 2. The overall summary of progress to date is set out in paragraph 5.2, which highlights that 16% of measures are complete, with 64% on target. Nearly 9% have reported minor slippage, with 5% of measures reporting major slippage. Key achievements within the year are set out in paragraph 5.3, and I'd highlight just a few of these, including the completion of the waste service review. 126 road safety schemes have been delivered, the construction of the replacement Clyde Bridge, works to secure the delivery of Larkhall Leisure Centre, support for businesses in South Lanarkshire has exceeded targets, as has participants in employability programmes, and continued work to realise the ambitions of both the East Kilbride and Hamilton master plans. In respect of measures where major slippage has been reported, further detail and management actions is provided of the 3 projects in paragraph 5.4 relating to household waste, maintenance of the road network and business start-ups. With that, I just turn back to the recommendation and ask that the Community and Enterprise Resource Plan for Quarter 4 Progress Report 24-25 be noted, that the key achievements made by the resource to date also be noted, that the areas for improvement and associated management actions be noted, and that the additional scrutiny of change in measures status between Q2 and Q4 also be noted. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alison. Could I maybe begin by just noting, or echoing your comment, that there's a number of good news stories, and amongst that, not least the full fibre progress, the waste sent to landfill report, the road safety schemes, and some of the employability and other things of that sort. So perhaps our publicity people can keep an eye on that kind of thing, if they may. I think there's some number of good stories there. In terms of questions, can I come to Councillor Ross Clark, who I think I should congratulate on his elevation to Deputy Leader of the SNP Opposition Group. Ross.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Alison for the report. More of a comment than a question on page 67. I do think it is disappointing to see that the percentage of our road network that should be considered for maintenance has gone up, every year since this administration took office, and that our roads are actually worsening, or seem to be worsening year on year. But I also think it's certainly disappointing to see that our target seems to be maintaining, that our focus is on stabilising rather than improving, because I think we should always be seeking to improve our road conditions and not just try to put our effort in to making sure things stay the same. So more of a comment on that rather than a question.
Thanks very much, Ross. Could I observe, if I may, that the roads budget, of course, has been increased by £12 million in the last budget, exactly to deal with the way in which it was left by the last administration and the problems that we've been given because of the lack of adequate funding from the Scottish Government. So I think we won't take perhaps any great number of lessons from the SNP on the question of roads. Could we move to Councillor Kirsten Robb?
Thank you. I've got 3 questions, if that's okay. I'll take them one at a time, and then it's up to yourself if you want to let the officer in, Chair. Okay, the first is on page 52 on the reduce, reusing and recycling. Obviously, recycling rates have been struggling for many years now. The resource outcome is actually to reduce, reuse and recycle waste, but the measure on page 55, we're only measuring recycling. So I think there might be an issue there with what we're actually measuring. We're not measuring reducing or reusing. So I wanted to ask, what other measures are being taken and monitored to help people reduce and reuse, and if that could be expanded on in future reports?
That's quite an interesting question. I'm not quite sure how easy it is to measure the other things. That's the trouble. Kevin, do you want to respond to that one before we move on to other issues?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks, Councillor Rowe, for your question. So we are, of course, taking our recycling and our reuse quite seriously. So in the last couple of months, because we've been asked about this on quite a regular basis, we have been doing some bits and pieces in the background, as you know. So we have reviewed where we are in terms of signposting. We are starting to work with smaller organisations and trying to promote things like reuse in textiles. But for us to make a big difference, we really need to invest in the resources that we have available. And at agenda item number 10, you will see that there is a report on PPE PR and our proposals to invest some of this money into a dedicated team. So I think that will be the way forward if we want to take this seriously. If we really want to invest in reuse, then we need to invest in it as a council. So that might become clearer when we get to agenda item 10.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that one. On page 64, we cover the WUDs as a contribution to why our recycling rates aren't very high. And I think the radical change that is needed on waste needs to start with the language. And we talked about this in climate, the committee as well. At the moment, it acknowledges that WUDs can only be incinerated, but that's not true. They can be reused, which we talked about in climate. Can I make an amendment that we add in and reused? So we start to acknowledge that in committee papers that these things can be reused, and that then follows through into the important work that Kirsty and the team are doing. So we say it can only be incinerated, but they can be reused as well if the right infrastructure is in place.
I'm not sure it's appropriate to amend this report, is it? But I'll take it guidance on that one. The point's taken, I think.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor, for the question. Yeah, I'm not sure it's appropriate for this report, because what we're seeing here is we can only incinerate it once it's get to our point, so we wouldn't be reusing it. I think what you're getting at is the discussions we've had before. We need to try and avoid it coming into the waste system, because it's at that point it can be reused. So, whereas I'd be reluctant to change that report, I think a lot of the work we're doing around reuse is making sure we're getting the message out there that people are using alternatives to bringing it into the waste system so that it is being reused. But at this point, once we receive it at that point, there is only that option then for us to deal with it. So I just want to be clear around that.
Okay. You're the third one, Kirsten, had you?
Okay, that was waste, and then there's another two. Sure. On page 53, we talk about the Calder Glen Master Plan. Elected members haven't had any update on this for over a year. Last one was in June, where we got a kind of big picture. So I'm really concerned about this, especially when we see a contract let further in the papers to take two particular projects forward when nobody's signed off or seen the strategy behind the master plan. So I would like to ask, particularly with thinking about an infrastructure first approach and getting decisions right the first time, when will elected members see a final draft of the master plan? When will the community get a chance to have a look at it? And given ongoing concerns about maintenance in the park, can we see it very soon before any decisions are made about particular projects?
Alison, I think, would deal with that.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Robb. Yes, the intention is to bring up a full paper to committee in October on the master plan. We have been working in the background on a whole host of various elements of both master plans, because you'll appreciate there's one for Shatler and one for Calder Glen, and that includes the full business case and the economic appraisals supporting it. So the intention is to bring that to committee. We're also intending to go back out to community consultation in the coming weeks to further road test the thinking around the emerging projects. So as we said last year, we have identified a number of projects. Those have been developed up in terms of the thinking and the business cases, and the proposal is to further show our thinking on that with the community and with the committee. We're coming back to committee in October for approval of both those master plans.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The last one is different. It's about the tourism strategy on page 88. It says there about we're holding off a tourism strategy until a visitor levy is in place. I wanted to ask, has the council started making an approach on the visitor levy, because it could improve services and facilities for tourists and locals alike? Who is involved in it, and when we expect to announce such an approach?
That's Alison too.
Thank you. Yes, we have been developing our thinking on the visitor levy. There's been a number of internal meetings. We've also been looking, casting our eyes across what's happening across all of Scotland in terms of some local authorities that have progressed to a formal consultation stage and others that are also implementing, and there are several that have chosen not to. So we are intending to bring a paper to committee on that, outlining the pros and cons, because there are pros and cons towards that, the potential benefits that could be afforded to the council, and any levy, what might their options be around spend of that. So we will be coming to committee with a paper on that.
Do we know approximately when, please?
I'm not I'll pass back to David.
Thanks very much, Alison. Thanks very much, Councillor Robb. Our intention in the first instance is to take a paper to the corporate management team over the next few weeks. Thereafter, we will be picking the appropriate committee to bring. We might not be this one, it might be one of other committees, but we do intend over the next couple of months to have a paper brought to committee on visitor levies.
Okay, thanks for all that.
Thanks very much. Councillor Anderson.
First of all, your comment to Councillor Ross Clark about the budgets of the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government is funding the councils, but the problem we've got in the council is you're having to spend it on increased PFI funds all the time. And also, if you look at it now, we're having to send down more money to Westminster coffers via increased national insurance contributions, which I've failed to mention. But my real question
I
here
think, Councillor
was...
Anderson, we're going a bit off beam, if I may say so. I mean,
No,
there's
no,
a debate
you
we
went
had,
off
no
beam.
doubt, but not perhaps to that degree.
You went off beam. So on page 67, my question was regarding the number of road casualties in South Lanarkshire. The target was 370. It's 382, but the status is amber. Surely that's got to be red. We haven't even finished because there was more deaths this year than last year, more casualties. Why is that not red instead of amber?
Colin, perhaps, yes.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Anderson, for your point. I think the kind of stats on this side have always been kind of challenging to monitor. We're only just contributing to the national picture in Scotland as well. I suppose it could be argued that, you know, not achieving 382 could be red, but we were pretty close. And working with our partners, I think that is a significant achievement. So I think to identify it as red, and certainly Dave and I had a chat before this paper was produced, identifying it as red would have been a little bit unfair in terms of all the work that we've done. So I thought amber was enough to highlight a challenging area for us to continue to focus on, but not as bad as a red. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barker. Ralph.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for that report, Helen, and answers so far from Kirsty. Goes back to page 64. Not my usual question about woods, but just the publicity aspect of landfill. Is our landfill being sent by road to England? Would we know? Thanks.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. No, our residual waste is sent to Dunbar. So it's incinerated at Viridor facility in Dunbar. So we don't have anything that's going to England in terms of residual waste. We do have our sort of recyclable waste will end up in England because that's where the majority of the secondary processors are, but our residual waste is not. It's kept within Scotland.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think there's any more questions. What I think the report does indicate is the sheer volume of work that is done by the Council, its officials and its partners right across the whole sphere of the Community Enterprises budget. So thank you very much for the work done there. Sorry, David McLachlan.
Thank you, Chair. It was Kirsty's answer. The waste, the residual waste does go to Dunbar to get incinerated, but it's not just incinerated. You could explain it because we've been to the site for a visit, and it's not just a case of the waste gets incinerated, because it's the staff there, I recall them suggesting that the waste, they don't regard it as waste, they regard it as fuel, because that fuel then produces something else. But I'll ask you to elaborate a wee bit, Kirsty, if you don't mind.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, you're absolutely right. So the waste is incinerated. However, there is energy recovery from that. So the waste generates heat. That heat converts steam to electricity. So there is a product from that. So that is why it is higher up the waste hierarchy than if the waste was landfilled.
So it's a very environmentally friendly way to deal with that particular waste, rather than...
For waste that's not recycled, it's below recycling in the waste hierarchy, but above landfill.
Yeah.
So yes, so we are getting energy from that.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
I think we'll leave its precise status hanging, perhaps, as part of the discussion. Thank you very much for that. That was quite an interesting report.
I'll second it.
Yes, thank you very much. Moved and seconded. That report's approved. Can we move on to item 9, which is the primary school expansion of free school meals as Scottish Child Payment, pages 95 to 98. And Anne Goldie is going to speak to that report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this report is to provide a brief update on the expansion of free school meals for eligible primary school children who are entitled to the Scottish Child Payment, which has been provided by the Scottish Government, and also to seek approval to increase the establishment on a permanent basis for facility services employees to support and promote the expansion of free school meals. In relation to the background to this report, in 25-26, the Scottish Government provided £37 million to assist with the school meal costs for the next phase of the free school meal programme, which extends free school meal provision to pupils in Primary 6 and Primary 7 who are in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment. This was rolled out from February 2025. Right. Previous funding has been received, which supported capital works, one-off revenue costs and recurring revenue for this rollout from February. South Lanarkshire Council has received capital funds of 400,000 for kitchen and dining extensions and that was across 4 schools, and the work took place in 23-24 and 24-25, and all these 4 projects have been completed. The data received from Social Security Scotland advised that there would be 1,228 Primary 6 and Primary 7 pupils newly eligible for a free school meal who are aligned to the Scottish Child Payment. However, due to the lack of data sharing agreements between Scottish Government and the Department of Work and Pensions, this figure could not be broken down to school level. South Lanarkshire Council received a total revenue funding of £2.184 million over the last 3 financial years to deliver this free school meal expansion programme, and it's been rolled out since February 2025. An update on the progress is that we have implemented free school meals for those entitled to free school meals from the 20th of February. However, this was via local arrangements for registration. This was due to the data sharing agreements not being in place, and we've been awaiting the data on the newly eligible children to implement the normal process of auto-enrolment. Once this is in place, this will allow us a more targeted approach with communication being sent direct to parents and carers who have not manually registered already. The revenue budget for 25-26 has been realigned, and the funds allocated to cover the additional food costs, supplies and services, allocation of cover, as well as anticipated loss of income. There has been a soft start to the implementation. Additional staffing is now required for the new term starting in August, and where we expect the full rollout. Details of the posts and the costs are covered in Section 5 and Section 6 of the report. The additional staffing required is to support the implementation and rollout of the policy. The additional staffing are required, and these posts include catering assistants, assistant cook in charges and assistant facility officers who will support the catering delivery at site, work with education, parents and carers to maximise the meal uptake of the national policy and free school meals in general, as well as supporting the catering operation. Funding for these posts will be met from the revenue budget of £2.184 million, as noted in paragraph 3.5. The total cost of the additional staffing to deliver the policy is £212,000, and this will be met from the additional revenue budget already received from the Scottish Government. Therefore, can I take the committee back to section 2 of the report that notes the content of the report and that the permanent increase to establishment, as detailed in section 6 of the report, be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Could I say, I think paragraph 3.5 is actually missing from the report we've actually got, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not quite sure what's happened to it. Seems to be a gap on the report. I think it relates to the national funding of that in any event. In terms of questions, can I... Sorry. 95 to 96. Right, still there, yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's mentioned later on, I suppose. Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. I'd certainly welcome this report and welcome the additional money coming from the Scottish Government. This is an important issue, the free school meals for children, especially receiving the Scottish Child Payment. I'm sure we all would love to see the end of child poverty right across the UK. And it's just unfortunate that the Labour Party have decided not to lift the two-child cap, which would lift 500,000
Sorry, Councillor
children.
Anderson. Again, I really don't think this is part of the agenda item. I mean, whether it's
Well,
valid
that is
or
here.
not is another issue.
You just don't want to hear it.
I'm trying to keep to the agenda. We've got a long agenda in the first place. Can we stick to the agenda if you don't mind? Councillor Andrea Cowan had a note there. I don't know if she's still got a question or she's withdrawn that. Andrea.
Hi, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I just also, following Councillor Anderson, just wanted to welcome this. I'm also pleased to see that there are some local jobs that will be generated from this. 13 at the moment, but you know, every job counts, and especially in in the locality where I would expect these jobs to come from. So yeah, great. I hope the pilot's successful and it gets rolled out throughout the rest of Scotland. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Andrea. Could I ask, if I may, item 3.3 talks about this data problem between the Social Security Scotland and the Council and Scottish Government and so forth. Can I ask if that's been resolved now? Is there still a problem with this data sharing agreement between the two governments?
I'm pleased to say it has been resolved. South Lanarkshire received the data late last week. And we're in the process at the moment of doing the auto-enrolment for both primary 6 and 7 eligible pupils and for the test of change. For the secondary
I'm bound to say, without casting aspersions on any particular government, the issue of information to enable the council to do its job is highly unsatisfactory if we're having to operate on estimates and information that's not there to be looked at. It's just an observation. We can't do much about it at our level, I guess. But it's not the first time that either from the Scottish Government or the UK Government there have been issues to do with information made available and decisions about things that affect our council's budget. No further questions, I don't think. Can I therefore move that report? Thank you very much. That report's approved. Moving on to item 10, which is the important issue of the packaging extended producer responsibility funding waste investment, pages 99 to 106. Can I invite Kirsty Maguire to speak to that report?
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report is to provide the committee with an update on the Packaging Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme, to advise on the scope of EPR payments, the assessment process and the likely impacts on the Council in future. Lastly, it is to advise the committee on the proposal to use a proportion of the 25-26 EPR payment to establish a dedicated team with remit to improve household waste management services in South Lanarkshire. Section 3 of the report sets out the background and contains a summary of the upcoming policy and legislative changes which are aimed at driving improvements in the waste sector. EPR is discussed more fully at sections 3.5 to 3.9 of the report, with sections 3.8 providing an update on the content of the latest notice of assessment, which estimates that the Council's net efficient disposal costs for the period 2025 to 2026 will be 7.716 million, and notes that that's a drop of around 1% from the initial notice of assessment letter, which was issued by DEFRA in November 2024. It also refers to the fact that this compares favourably to other local authorities in Scotland, where the average reduction between the first and second notice of assessment is circa 9%. Information on the scope of EPR payments can be found in section 4 of the report. Reference is made here to the requirement for accurate, detailed financial performance returns, and the efficiency assessment process is also covered here. Section 4 also sets out the requirement for effectiveness assessments, which are required to be undertaken by the scheme administrator, which is PAC UK, no later than 2028, and mentions the criteria that could be used by the scheme administrator to assess the council's effectiveness. The improvement process and the potential for 20% deductions to funding in future years is also referred to here. The potential implication of effectiveness assessments is discussed at section 5 of the report. These include the possible service changes required to ensure that the council's refuse collection services are deemed to be effective in future. Some of the changes required to meet efficiency assessment criteria will have the added benefit of reducing the financial burden associated with ETS, and that's the emissions trading scheme, which is referred to earlier in the report at section 3. Whilst we know that there are both financial and environmental benefits associated with making improvements to our household waste collection services, the changes required are substantial and cannot be resourced from existing waste employee establishment. With that in mind, Section 6 of the report sets out a proposal to set up a dedicated team comprising of 1 advisor, 2 officers and 2 assistants to develop and deliver a range of projects, examples of which are set out Section 6.1 of the report. These are aimed at ensuring the Council is best placed to comply with the new statutory obligations and provide an effective and efficient refuse collection service. Given the need to collect and return detailed financial and performance information to DEFRA, this is referred to at section 4.2, it is also proposed that 0.5 full-time equivalent accountants post is established to undertake this work. It is proposed that the posts are recruited on a permanent basis, given the difficulties associated with recruiting temporary posts, especially in this area, which is a specialist area. The employee implications associated with the proposal are set out in section 7 of the report. Section 8 sets out the financial implications of the proposal with annual costs of 0.305 million. It is also proposed that the employee costs for the first 2 years are met from the EPR funding, which relates to the 25-26 period. Thereafter, staffing costs will be considered as part of the revenue budget strategy process. It is also proposed that the remainder of the EPR allocation is considered as part of the budget strategy process. In terms of recommendations at section 2 of the report, the committee is asked to approve the following recommendations. 1. Note the report. 2. Approve the proposal to utilise a proportion of the 25-26 EPR funding to establish a dedicated team funded for 2 years. And 3. Note that the financial implications referred to at sections 8.2 and 8.3 of the report will be considered as part of the 25-26 Revenue Budget Monitoring Report to the next Executive Committee on 27th of August 2025. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. I mean, it's perhaps worth making a couple of observations on this rather complicated issue, because it is a difficult one. The administration put down a marker at the time of the budget about this. We didn't include it in the budget arrangements because of the various uncertainties that surround it. Some of those uncertainties are still there surrounding it. We don't, for example, have confirmation yet from the Scottish Government as to whether the block grant will be adjusted by the value of this. That's a pretty important thing. So we're in some difficulties in looking forward, if you like, to the extent to which we can use this money going forward. It's fairly likely as well there'll be some conditions attached linking to the general waste strategy, if you like. So there's a number of differences about this sort of matter. It will not be for decision today as far as the rest of the money is concerned. That's going to the Executive Committee at its next meeting, to be looked at as part of the strategy there. And the administration will want to look between now and then at the issues that arise from this and the strategic implications of where we're going and the potential for using this particular money. There's clearly a balance, as there always is in these things, between using finance to sort out the revenue gaps that we're unfortunately so familiar with, and being able to use what after all is a new source of money for more productive things within communities' enterprise. So there's some issues there. So the indications in the report about what might or might not happen are for the Executive Committee, other than the appointment of the officers that we got concerned here. I thought it might be useful to say that to start. There's a bit of an open book here a wee bit at this moment in time. Councillor Ross Clark. Ross.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. It's good to see this report coming forward and the confirmation of the funding, especially after the discussion which was had at full council. My question, I suppose, is in 2 parts. Firstly, is on the proposed use of this 610,000. Were there any other options or any other proposals that were considered rather than this funding? I've got nothing against this proposal, but I think it's useful to know, whenever we have funding options coming through, we know what alternative proposals were considered and how this one was arrived at. But I do get the reasons that are set out in the report. Secondly, it's on the remainder of that money, which the Chair just touched upon. I suppose we were, looking for that commitment that this money, would be used for things associated with the principles of the scheme to do with waste, litter and fly tipping. And it is also mentioned in, I think, 8.2 in the report, but I suppose looking for that kind of reaffirming that commitment that this funding will be, associated with those principles when it does come forward to executive committee. So just those are the two things I've got just now.
David, do you want to say something about that?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Councillor Ross. I suppose I'll say something, and if Kevin wants to come in, that would be fine too. What I would say is, as I think has been described in terms of as the report is describing, this is a bit of an iterative process where this report, the information has not been provided around about this subject matter all in the one go. It's been kind of coming in stages. And even as we sit here just now, we don't have all of the information of how this will develop into the future. And that's why in terms of when you talk about what the options we looked at, we thought the best use of the element of money that we're asking a decision to be made on just now was around about creating a team of people that can work on this as it develops, and we will then be in a much better position as we move forward as to understand the scheme, the developing outcomes, the implications for the council, and how we can best address that. And that's why we've came forward with this as a proposal in terms of that spend. In terms of the balance of that money, in terms of the £7 million that's left, what we're suggesting in this report, and it's covered in the financial implications in sections 8 of the report, in particular 8.2, is that this money would go into the waste service, and what we're suggesting then, or what we're saying in this report, that would then release for that 1 year that equivalent amount of core budget from the waste service, which we were putting over for a decision to be made at executive committee so in August. So the idea is that this money would go in towards the areas of waste, because we know that's a safe ground in terms of what we would use this money for. But the equivalent amount of our core budget for that 1 year would be passed over for a decision to be made at executive committee in August this year. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, that's very much echoing, I think, what I tried to say earlier on in terms of the use of this money. So, I mean, I think we're all signed up to both the Act and the principles that Ross Clark has mentioned there. The question is, how can we best make use of this money against the background of the other pressures that exist on this? Councillor David Watson.
Thanks, Chair. And I note your point about this is probably an early report and there'll be details going to further committees and executive for discussion, etc. If I'm reading this right at 5.3, I think the direction of travel is to reduce the size of the residual waste bins in households at some point. And I think my plea is, if we're going to do that, that we get the comms right on it. I don't think we get the comms right on the recycling bins, the burgundy bins. I'm still getting a phone call last week on it from somebody who wasn't aware of what was happening, had his bin been stickered and all the rest of it. Not everybody's on social media, not everybody picks up on these things. And the point was made, some fundamental major change like that, why can't we put a notice out if we've got a lead-in time on it with a council tax notice, etc., or something like that, that if it's going to be a substantial change, because if not, I think we could possibly run into problems with it. And also, we need to get the narrative right and explain why we're actually doing it. Because, I mean, the message out there will just be, oh, it's just the council cutbacks again. And people need to understand why it's happening, if it happens like that. Maybe I'm wrong in reading that like that, but that's my take on the direction of travel. Thanks.
There's no decision being asked for on that particular aspect at this moment in time. There's nothing projected just quite at the moment. What there will be is the likelihood of national requirements in that area, which will, put it into a certain degree of context, and Kevin can explain some of that.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Watson. You're absolutely right. There is a direction of travel around this. We brought a paper in May or March earlier in the year, bringing an update in the waste review, but also a policy update that kind of sets out the complexity of the whole waste sector at the moment, and there's just no certainty around it. One of the things we highlighted is about the Code of Practice. We're expecting it to be published in March next year. But again, the mood music around all of that is about the minimisation of residual waste, and there's two ways you can do that. It's about collection frequencies or your bin size. So again, we're flagging this up in a second paper because there is a direction of travel around that, and the Council will need to make a decision on it at the right time. But we've paused that at this moment in time just to see exactly what the Code of Practice is going to say next year, and we'll bring papers forward at that time. In terms of the comms, your second part of the question, regarding waste permit, we have had a lot of feedback around that as well. We tried to target every household. We tagged every bin. Every household that has a burgundy bin, we had tags on it, asking them, giving them the information about the introduction of the service. But we've had enough feedback to suggest that we haven't actually hit the mark in terms of getting to every household. So any future iteration of this for next year for the garden waste permit, or any other changes that we'll make to the service, we'll be rethinking exactly how we do that in terms of our comms.
It's worth observing as well the point made in 5.3 about the fact that 2/3 of the waste in the residual bins is in fact recyclable. And that clearly has got to be part of our target at some point, doesn't it? Councillor Kirsten, sorry, David.
I fully accept that, Robert, and I just think it's just that we need to get the comms right, and I accept that all the bins were tagged, but feedback I've got, not everybody saw them, whether they were blown away, whatever, not. And then one suggestion actually given me last week when I was talking to somebody about it was that they maybe didn't put their red bin out that week and didn't get the tag as such to pick up on it. So there's folk are missing out on information just by doing things like that. And that's why I say if there's going to be, if this is direction of travel, we know it's going to happen, there's a lead time in it, maybe get something out through the council tax bills as well next year.
I think your point's very much noted. Councillor Kirsten Robb. Kirsten.
Thank you. I welcome this new team and the new radical changes that we need to bring to waste. And let's remember why that is. It's because we live on a finite planet, and the way we waste things has to be rethought completely. Waste is actually a resource, and with the right kind of approach, we can help people save money, learn new skills, and boost the local economy and tie in with our community wealth building initiatives. So I'm really pleased in the outcomes is that you want to work with the third sector and community sector because they're already recycling and reusing a lot of things and providing opportunities to volunteer and keep money in circulating in the local economy. So we need to think about waste as part of a bigger picture tied to economy, skills, well-being and all that bigger picture. Thinking about the comms thing, it's not just about the comms, it's having the practical alternatives that are convenient, affordable for people to do with their waste as well. So that's why I suggested the compost bin scheme, which is now, it was not sold out because they were free, but within a few hours. So these sort of practical approaches that really help people, give people the alternatives, which I see as one of the outcomes in the paper as well. That's what we need to put in place for people and think about the waste hierarchy right from the start, not at the end as an amendment to a committee paper at the last minute. So we need to be thinking right from a strategic level about all these matters. So I welcome this and look forward to the discussion at the executive.
Thanks very much, Kirsten. That's useful. I think there's general support for the direction of travel in the paper. There's quite a lot of tangled issues that emerge out of it, of course, to be taken forward. Can I therefore move the report?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That report is approved. Moving on to item 11, which is the Hamilton Town Centre Master Plan Update, pages 107 to 112. Ian Ross is going to speak to that report. Ian.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. The purpose of this report is to update committee on the progress of the Hamilton Town Centre Master Plan, to update on the potential surrender of the Regent's Shopping Centre ground lease, and to outline the projects being scoped out for the investment in the town centre. Section 3 of the report really just gives members a reminder of the scope of the master plan, that it was approved by executive committee back in February 2024, and the consultation exercise that was carried out in March 24, during which we had around 900 responses from the public. There's been a considerable period of work going on in between by members in our team and beyond, and that's led to a consultation and information session with the business community back in February, and that's been augmented by ongoing liaison with the Business Improvement District, who we work very closely with. Section 4 of the report touches on each of those different elements that we mention in Section 3. I don't intend to go through each one, but just picking out some of the key parts. The sale of the Regent Centre completed in late June this year, and hopefully picked up on some of the press that the new owner, a company called Parial, I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced, but we've been working very closely with them, and the principal of that company has been very proactive in engaging with officers, and leads us to be very optimistic about the delivery of those aspects of the master plan. He's in the process of putting his own management team and structures in place for Regent Centre, which is an essential part of that handover, and then we'll see that moving into some of the physical activity very soon. Section 4.3 touches on the surrender of the ground lease, and this is not a new element in the master plan. The delivery of the residential elements of the master plan can't be done under a ground lease structure, so it was always envisaged that we would get to this point, and this is just introducing to members that these discussions are ongoing. We will work with colleagues in legal and property services to come up with suitable proposals, and that will be brought to a committee once we have the details of those terms pulled together. Section 4.5 touched on the Bears building. Again, I'd hoped to be coming here saying that transaction had concluded. As it says in the report, it's in the final stages of completion. It's taken somewhat longer than anticipated, but again, the potential purchaser is very keen to secure that property and move forward. Section 4.7 touches on the former Vogue Bingo Hall in Quay Street, and as part of our normal processes through the master plan, a survey of the building was carried out, which identified some concerns, which led to 3 further surveys of the structure, which, as you'll see in 4.7, were looked at from the point of view of valuation, structural and heritage. And in all cases, the reports have identified that the building is beyond salvage. It is structurally unsound, and that demolition is recommended. This has really come about the way in which the building is constructed. It's not of the same quality of some of the buildings in Hamilton with the kind of sandstone structures. We see this as a brick-built structure, and inevitably over time these types of building materials deteriorate, and that's the stage it's come to. That's led through the normal statutory processes for a dangerous building notice to be served, and economic development, as essentially the owner on behalf of the council, are moving forward through the statutory processes, and once those are in place, we'll move to appoint a demolition contractor and have the building removed, hopefully within the next couple of months at most. At 4.12, we know that will then obviously leave a gap site, and the intention is that a suitable meanwhile use will be put in place, so appropriate fencing or hoardings with perhaps a small landscaped area at the front just to soften that edge. And we are already in active discussions with potential future users of that site, but possibly around residential use. The removal of the frontage makes the site somewhat more viable from that point of view. At 4.13, we touch on the town square, and again within the master plan we noted that there was an ambition to soften and improve that space, which would encourage people to spend more time there. So the design works are ongoing. Once we've settled on some proposals, that will be subject to consultation and obviously brought back to members for their consideration. Section 5 of the report touches on the funding which was awarded at during the budget, 25-26 budget of £8 million to a Town Centre First programme, and the table at section 5 pulls together a series of proposals which officers believe are deliverable within reasonably short time frames, working in many cases with partners, and I say that those are the 8 to 10 proposals that we're looking to push forward. Alongside that, we are procuring an external technical team that would support any of the technical studies involved in delivering these, and working obviously with colleagues across a number of council services to look at how these could be effectively delivered. Section 6 notes that a number of the assets, not least the Vogue, is part of the common good account. Some of these assets were purchased with common good money, and just to reassure members that in all cases the officers in economic development, property, finance, legal are working together to make sure that each of those properties is dealt with appropriately, and that is governed appropriately. So if I can take you back to section 2 in terms of the recommendations, asking that members note the update of the master plan, note that the potential surrender of the ground lease and Regent Centre be taken forward, and that the projects in section 5 within the table be approved as the focus for the next stage of the master plan delivery.
Thanks very much. Any questions on this? Councillor Colin Dewar. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's quite a few positive things contained within this report, notwithstanding at 4.14, the Quarry Street opening, and that's been led by Hamilton Bid and obviously officers within the council, and that has been very successful. The only thing I would ask on that is that for a promotion to the public, that there's a 30-minute limit and that they have to park within bays. There does seem a little bit of maybe not exactly knowledge of this amongst the general public, and I think it would be good if there was further promotion of this by the council as well as the bid for this. On 4.1, the Regent Centre, obviously the purchase of the Regent Centre looks to be a positive step. The only thing I would ask there is there an estimated timescale for a potential surrender of the ground lease that's held by the council? The new owner presumably won't proceed further with redevelopment without it. And accordingly, could there be a risk if an agreement can't be reached upon valuation of the ground lease being advised that the new owner could potentially walk away and put the Regent Centre back up for sale? I don't know if you want to take that first. I've got another couple of things.
Do you want to deal with that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I think certainly in terms of the Quarry Street, there was quite a lot of publication initially, but certainly we can work with Colin's team around the messaging around that, and the making sure that the public are fully aware of that. In terms of the surrender, we are moving forward. We are in the process of appointing valuers to assess that, and we hope that will lead to a consensus with the new owner. There's always a risk in the delivery of these things. There's always challenges around whether owners or purchasers will take things forward. I'm comforted by the fact that he has concluded he has purchased it. He has engaged with us significantly. It's not been conditional on the ground lease being surrendered, although he's always been very clear that that's an ambition. So I think we just need to keep moving forward, and I think there's a strong likelihood that we will be able to reach consensus on that.
The other things at 4.4, it's a very quick question on the New Cross. Has there been any movement on discussions with the remaining tenant? If you will.
Thank you. That's an exercise that's been led by colleagues in property, but I spoke to them today, and I understand that valuers are being appointed this week jointly, and that will hopefully lead to continued positive discussions.
Right, thanks. And 4.7 onwards, regarding the Vogue building, it's obviously regrettable that the state of the listed facade has reached the stage where demolition is being recommended. As it's likely that there will be a number of objections during public consultation, is the estimated cost of reinstatement able to be advised?
That was something that was considered of each of these surveys, and in none of them were the surveyors able to put an estimate on that. In other words, the existing structure is beyond salvage, and therefore I suppose it would be a rebuild with new materials, and therefore essentially not to the same structure. So in that sense, apologies, no, there isn't a figure that would allow the existing structure to be retained.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. David McLachlan. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to welcome the report and want to thank the officials, Alison, Ian and everybody else that's involved. They've been keeping members up to date as things move along. I have met with the new owner of the Regent Centre, and I'm really quite encouraged about how enthusiastic he is. He really wants to move ahead, and just to, you know, the points that Colin raised there about whether he may wish to sell it on, that's certainly not the impression I get when I speak to him. The point about the former Vogue site, there was a members' meeting took place, and I don't think you were there, Colin, but it was explained really well that that part of the building is now at serious risk of maybe, you know, and Fraser spoke a bit about this as well. So it's well beyond, you know, it's well beyond the information we got at the members. And I don't know why you weren't there, Colin, but maybe you had something else on, but it was well explained at that time. The point, I want to just mention the part about the parking in Quarry Street. I do see some situations where people get quite upset if they get a parking ticket, but, you know, anywhere where there's restricted parking or limited parking, there's signs, and there is signs in Quarry Street to show that it's limited to 30 minutes. Another issue is where people park outside the lines now. There was an issue in the past when the lines weren't clear, but that's now been rectified, and the way I see what's happening in Quarry Street with the 30-minute limited, it's really a fantastic move forward, because it's allowing people to get access to the town centre, to Quarry Street at least, and the adjoining parts, where they otherwise wouldn't have, because they wouldn't have went to pay for parking and walk all the distance. So it's encouraging additional footfall into Quarry Street, so I really welcome that as well. And you're right, Colin, there are some people, but there's an old saying, isn't there? You can please some of the people all the time, and all of the people some of the times. You're never going to please them all the time, but for Colin Park's point of view, I'm really happy with the way that it's running in the Quarry Street at the moment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, David. I think I'd just like to echo the comments you made there, if I may, about the progress that's been made here. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but the end result, and which we're moving towards, should be a considerably enhanced town centre for Hamilton, which is what it's all about. Can I move the report, item 11?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That report's approved. Moving on to item 12, which is the Scottish Government Vacant and Derelict Land Fund Programme, 25-26, pages 113 to 116. Alison Brown to speak to that.
Thank you. This report advises committee of progress made during 24-25 in implementing the delivery plan of the Scottish Government's Vacant Derelict Land Fund, and to agree the VDLF programme for 25-26. The Scottish Government's allocation to the Council for VDLF for last financial year was £425,000. A local delivery plan was approved by committee in November last year to implement the key objectives of VDLF, which are set out in paragraph 3.1. Progress achieved in 24-25 is set out in section 4 in relation to the proposed industrial development of Cathcart Road in Rutherglen, Clyde Climate Forest and Cunninger Loop Food Growing Project. In relation to the 25-26 VDLF allocation, it is 528,000, with 2 projects identified for which approval is being sought today. The first is Phase 2 of Clyde Cycle Park in Cambuslang. Clyde Cycle Park is an ambitious project that is creating a high-quality combination of cycle circuits on vacant derelict land adjacent to the Clyde, and it's to promote cycling to the community, the commuters, and also competition cycling. Clyde Cycle Park has completed the first phase of works, which includes a small cycling circuit and associated facilities, which were partly funded by VDLF. Clyde Cycle Park has now developed proposals for a more extensive circuit and improved facilities, which would mean that this circuit is only one of 3 off-road circuits in Scotland. The cost of these works is £1.2 million, including professional fees and contingency. And Clyde Cycle Park have now secured a major financial package of support of £1 million from Sport Scotland, with a commitment from the Council of £200,000 during the 25-26 budget approval process. Additional works have, however, been identified to complete the project, including fencing around the car park, accommodation at the start-finish line and utility works. These works are currently being designed, but it is estimated that they could cost up to a further £200,000. It is proposed that an additional and final allocation is made to Clyde Cycle Park up to a maximum of £200,000. As such, due to VDLF budget availability, it's proposed to substitute the £200,000 budget allocation with VDLF funding and provide an additional award of up to £200,000. And just to be clear, this is just an additional £200,000. It is not an additional £400,000. Works are due to commence this month and be complete by December. The second project is for an allocation of £25,000 to Clyde Climate Forests to continue their work to target tree planting in urban neighbourhoods. Projects are currently being identified for the balance of funding for 25-26, which is £103,000, and a further paper will be brought back to committee for approval. Taking us back to the recommendation, committee is asked to approve that the progress made for 24-25 in delivering the Vacant Derelict Land Fund programme be noted, and that the allocations of funds for 25-26 for the Vacant Derelict Land Fund delivery plan as set out in paragraphs 5.1 and 5.2 be approved.
Thanks very much, Alison. On questions, can I ask Councillor Maureen Devlin to...
Thanks, Chair. First of all, in the interest of transparency, I actually sit on the board, I sit on the Clyde Cycle, but I do not see this as a conflict of interest. So it's just let me declare that up front. And I have to welcome the report because I am aware of the work that's gone and also the work with yourselves working with this group to get where we are just now. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Maureen. Can I also echo your comments? I think it's a brilliant project. It's had a lot of input from, obviously, from the council now and also from the people in charge of it. But it's going ahead, apace, and I think it will be a huge achievement once the thing is completed, particularly with this phase 2 going forward. Can I move the report?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. That report's approved. Moving on to item 13, the revocation of the Wherleys, East Kilbride and Rutherglen air quality management areas, South Lanarkshire, pages 117 to 114, and Fraser Carlin is going to speak to this one.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this paper provides a summary of its activities and initiatives that have been undertaken by the Council, community and various stakeholders to improve air quality in Rutherglen and East Kilbride, and which in turn have led to this recommendation to revoke the designated management areas that have been in place for a number of years. Section 3 sets out the initiatives which, coupled to factors such as improvements in vehicle emissions, have delivered improvements to air quality, while Section 4 sets out the measurement and monitoring that is taking place. Section 5 of the report outlines the final processes that will need to be followed to confirm the revocation order and stresses that the areas will be continued to be monitored, as well as the rest of South Lanarkshire's air as within the context of our air quality strategy. 2 appendices are attached to the paper referring to each of the areas, and if accepted, the final details of the revocation order will be drawn up, advertised locally and implemented in October 2025. Members are asked to approve this process, and I would also welcome the improvements to air quality in these 2 areas. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fraser. Can I ask for any questions on that report? I don't see any. Can I welcome the report? Can I maybe perhaps just echo, however, that behind all of this, I think the changes in vehicle emissions standards and all that are quite important, along with the work that's been done here. And I'd welcome, if I may, the continued monitoring that's promised on these issues, because I think there's an ongoing issue at many of these road junctions and roundabouts and things that are the result here. And I think we need to keep an eye on this going forward. So thank you very much for that. Can I move the report?
I'll second it.
That report's approved. Moving on to item 14, the approval of the South Lanarkshire Council's food service plan for 25-26. That's again Fraser Carlin to speak.
Thanks, Chair. This item is an annual report that we bring to committee, and it outlines the work of the for the Council in terms of our statutory obligations and duties under the 1990 Food Safety Act. The plan outlines the governance arrangements, the resource commitments by the Council, as well as setting out the approach towards intervention, enforcement and service delivery. The plan has been subject to consultation with the Scottish Government, who are satisfied with the activities and commitments made by South Lanarkshire Council, and in this context it's recommended that members approve the plan that is attached as Appendix 1 of the report presented to you today. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Fraser, any questions on that report? I always find it a very interesting report, actually, in terms of the details of the breakdown of the shops and things which is contained in it. But can I move that report? Second, that report's approved. Item 15, Renewable Energy Fund Mill Rig Wind Farm Contributions, pages 173 to 178. Kenny Lean, please.
Thank you, Chair, and afternoon, councillors. Yeah, the report seeks approval for the community benefit payments generated from Mill Rig Wind Farm to be administered through the Renewable Energy Fund. At point 3, the background sets out the strategic policy nationally and locally in terms of community benefit and the RAF fund. At section 4, it sets out the detail of the wind farm near Drumclog in terms of the access for the power, and the road comes through East Ayrshire, and the wind farm is owned by On Path Energy. The developer has agreed with the local communities for the eligible area, which is set out at Appendix 1, which covers areas within East Ayrshire and South Lanarkshire. 4.3 sets out the level of funding, which is £5,000 per megawatt, and an annual income starting at £167,000. The panel, the community benefit, will be administered by a community panel similar to the Clyde Wind Farm Fund, and at 6.1 talk about a management fee per annum of 8% to administer the fund. For return to item 2, seek approval from committee.
Thanks very much, Kenny. No questions on that, I don't think. Can I move the report?
I'll second it.
That report's approved as well. Item 16, Community Benefit Funds, Renewable Energy Fund, grant applications, pages 179 to 184. Back to Kenny again.
Thank you, Chair. The report is a regular report in terms of grant applications seeking approval. There's 2 applications above £20,000, one from Douglas Community Development Company and one from Holland Bush Golf Club. Section 3 sets out the background, again, in terms of policy and seeking approval for grants above £20,000. Section 4 sets out the detail of the request, the grant application from Douglas Community Development Company, seeking funding to take on additional consultants. At 4.3 and 4.4 sets out the detail to take on some significant projects for the renovation of Douglas Arms Hotel and Crabtree Park Sports Pavilion. And this is to help the local community to develop robust plans. At 4.7, it sets out both the scoring and the level of intervention, and it sets out the match funding, which will also be required for this project to progress. At 5, the application from Holland Bush Golf Club for a total project value of £210,892 is set out, with a grant proposal of £155,892. This is from Holland Bush Skio to purchase grass-cutting machinery and to assist them with taking on the ownership and maintenance of the golf course. At Section 5.8, it sets out that the grant approval will be subject to a full CAT approval going to committee, and subsequently, if approval is given on the 12th of September 2025. 5.9 sets out the match funding, which again will be required for the approval, completion of the grant. Return to item 2, which seeks approval for these 2 grants as set out from committee.
Thanks very much, Kenny. I don't see any requests for questions. Can I move the report?
I'll second it.
Thanks very much. That report's approved. Item 17 is the Overton Bandstand Restoration, pages 185 to 188, and that's Gillian Simpson to speak to the report. Gillian.
Thanks, Chair.
This report is for noting today, and the purpose is to update committee on the restoration of Overton Bandstand within Overton Park in Rutherglen. As detailed in section 3, the structure sustained significant fire damage in June last year, and the council acted swiftly to make safe the area and assess the extent of the damage. In February this year, £300,000 was allocated from the council budget to repair and restore the bandstand. And it's very important that throughout these works that great care is taken to ensure the original character and features of the bandstand are preserved. However, as noted in section 3.4, it's also hoped that during the restoration we can incorporate some modern enhancements, including power and lighting, in order to support wider community use. And as noted in 7.2, we'll be applying for some external funding from HES to hopefully support these enhancements. Section 4 details some of the specialist contractors who have been involved in the project to date, and as set out in section 4.6, the estimated completion date for the works is spring 2026. However, this date could be impacted by a few months subject to the HES funding timescales. Either way, it is the intention that the newly restored bandstand will feature as part of the calendar events for the Rutherglen 900 celebrations. And section 5 outlines a community consultation which was launched in June this year and is still currently active with a closing date of Thursday this week. So in terms of recommendations, the council's commitment to restoring Overton Bandstand be noted, that the project aim of delivering the bandstand in line with the Rutherglen 900 celebrations be noted, the aims of the community consultation be noted, and the timeline and application criteria for the external funding bid for Historic Environment Scotland also be noted.
Thanks very much, Gillian. I think I probably should make a transparency statement as chair of Rutherglen 900, which is mentioned in the report. We don't obviously have any financial interest in this project as such, but we're very keen to see it go ahead. And as one of the local councillors, I very, very much welcome the report. It's of huge value to local people, and as has been indicated in the report, is linked into the Rutherglen 900 celebrations as well. What I think is important, as has been the case in other projects like this elsewhere, is that we managed to get some degree of community activity that uses the bandstand once it's renovated, and that's very much, I think, the direction of travel that we're interested in. Can I ask Councillor Andrea Cowan to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair. I'd also just like to state that for transparency that I've been involved with the Rutherglen 900 steering group as well. Just a couple of points. In the budget, there was £400,000 allocated to the Rutherglen 900 celebrations to include the renovation of the bandstand. So obviously that £300,000 has now been set aside for that. The other £100,000, I just really want some clarification on whether that funding will just be now available for Rutherglen 900 to spend, or if it's going to have to come back to committee for approval for any spend around that additional money. So that's just
can answer that for you, Alison.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, you're correct. There was 400,000 identified in the budget, 300,000 for the bandstand, an additional 100 for Rutherglen 900 activities. I have been working with the Rutherglen 900 team to identify what that £100,000 will go towards, and that's going towards supporting some revenue costs for Rutherglen 900, as well as potential some activity. And because it's already been approved by the council at budget setting, it doesn't require to come back to committee for approval. So I am looking and working with colleagues in finance, and indeed we do have an invoice from them for part of that money, and we're looking to move that across to Rutherglen 900 imminently.
We should perhaps add there's an advisory group of the various stakeholders, apart from the steering committee, who keep an eye on this, on which Alison, on behalf of the council, is represented. Councillor Margaret Cowie. Margaret.
Excuse me, sorry, Robert.
Sorry, Andrea.
Sorry, I just have another quick question.
Yeah, sorry.
Just around the application for the additional funding. It states that that you're at the moment preparing an expression of interest. So I've had a wee look at the Historic Environment Scotland website and had a wee look at how they work. And I see that an expression of interest, they normally come back within 10 days and let you know whether to progress with a full grant application. It does also say that the latest figures they have is that 51% of their grant applications are successful. And given that that's a relatively low number, I'm just wondering if there are any other funding any other funding possibilities being looked at in case this is unsuccessful. And obviously just wondering about the timescales involved, so that Rutherglen 900 obviously is next year. And if the bandstand is not, fully developed next year, it will still form a legacy from Rutherglen 900. But it would be great to get it done. And I'm just wondering if you've any more information on timescales.
It's progressed slightly in terms of the expression of interest being approved by the environmental group in that regard. Can you give a bit of answer to the rest of it?
Thanks for your question. Yes, you're absolutely right. There has been a bit of progress in the last week or so. The expression of interest has been approved. So we're now proceeding to progress with a full application. The initial timescale, there's certain deadlines throughout the year for submitting applications, the next one being the end of August. So we're pushing really hard to try and make that deadline. If we don't make that deadline, the next submission deadline is the end of December. And it can be up to 12 weeks thereafter for to find out whether you're successful or not, which is why we're pushing for obviously the earlier timescale, because that could impact on the project by a few months. Instead of spring, it may be summer before it's completed. If the funding's not successful, we can look at scaling back the project slightly. We talked in the report about some enhancements in terms of lighting and power to try and make better use of the bandstand. But if funding it doesn't allow, we can look at pulling that back, or we could certainly look and see if there's any other funding sources available. Yeah.
I think Councillor Brown would agree with me that would be a disappointment if we couldn't enhance the bandstand, because without these enhancements, it's just a structure. But we want the community, and I think that's what the community want, is to be able to use it. So I think these enhancements are really essential. So fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrea. I think it's the intention very much for us to be an active bandstand, not just a sort of monument, as it were. Councillor Cowie, Margaret.
Yeah, just for transparency as well, I've been involved in discussions around the bandstand with Rutherglen 900. And also I'd like to welcome this report, and the additional money received from Council has been much welcomed by the community. And I'm looking forward to, hopefully we can get the additional funding to see what enhancements can be done with the bandstand. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Councillor David McLachlan. Davy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a very good report and very welcome, given the circumstances as to why this renovation has to take place. As you'll be aware, Chair, or maybe not, but if you're not, I can explain. Myself and Colin Dewar and Martin Hose, the three local councillors, used our local action fund money to help restore our bandstand in Hamilton, Bother Road and Park in Hamilton here. But there's some really good bandstands up and down the council area. There's a Rutherglen one, there's a really nice one in Straven, there's a recently renovated one in Stonehouse. And it's good that it's encouraging that this additional funding is coming from the council to help restore these bandstands. I would like you to bear that in mind, Chair, at some point down the road when we are looking maybe for a little bit of funding, because the £50,000, while very much appreciated, is going to fall pretty short, I think. But we are looking at various different funding streams, and we've got a few people on board, not least the local action group, Bother Road Action Group, chaired by Peter McGee, who's a really good, cracking guy, great stalwart of the community and working well. And I've got a lot of assistance from officials as well. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to some sort of completion here in Rutherglen and in Hamilton at some point. So I'll maybe come knocking on your door at some point, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, David. One might argue that wasn't entirely on the agenda, but a good effort nevertheless.
God loves a trier, David.
I should perhaps add that I entirely agree with what you say about the bandstands and other things like fountains and other places. I was out at Stonehouse this morning, as it happened, to do a PR thing with regard to the fountain, which has been renovated there. Yeah. And I saw their bandstand too. I'm conscious there's one in another place with the same sort of thing. We've got a lot of historical heritage. Yeah. I'm really glad to say that in one form or another, across the council, we've been able to give a variety of different sorts of support in collaboration with partners to make this sort of thing happen. And particularly the Friends of the Parks type of organisations that you talk about, I think are hugely important in being able to help that happen. Yeah. So thank you very much for those comments.
It's interesting, Chair, that you mentioned Stonehouse. I play in the Stonehouse Pipe Band. Another wee plug here, if anybody's interested. I play in the Stonehouse Pipe Band, and we played at the opening of the bandstand. But there's another event taking place on Sunday this week. We've been invited along because I forget what, that's rude of me, I forget the actual reason why we're here. It's another celebration.
It's the opening of the fountain, the renovation of the fountain.
Yeah. So if anybody's not doing, if you're not looking for somebody doing something, you could come along to Stonehouse Park and hear an excellent pipe band playing.
Right, that's the advert
Another
space.
plug.
We haven't had adverts for pipe bands at this committee before, I don't think. Can I move the report with some pleasure? Thank you very much. That report's approved. We move on to item 18, the Clyde Metro update, pages 188 to 198. Colin Park to speak to that report.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'll try my best to follow that, Councillor McLachlan, as well. The purpose of this report is to provide an update to highlight the progress made to develop the Clyde Metro Case for Investment programme by project partners. Clyde Metro is a flagship regional transport infrastructure initiative that's aimed at delivering a modern, integrated mass transit system across the Glasgow City region and including penetrating through into South Lanarkshire. This is a very full, technical and detailed paper, so I don't intend to go into that level of detail, but I do intend to just kind of cover some of the key sections within the report. Section 3, in terms of background, the programme has been developed collaboratively, led by SPT, with support from Glasgow City Council, Transport Scotland and active involvement from officers from the Council. We are involved and fully engaged in the Metro Senior Officers Group, and we're ensuring South Lanarkshire's interests are represented and that we remain informed and influential throughout the development. Funding of £12.15 million has been allocated from the Glasgow City Region City Deal, with equal contributions from Scottish and UK governments, and this supports the development of the business case and associated technical work streams. In terms of progress to date, Stage 1 has been completed. This included a case for change, so that identified regional transport challenges and it set out a vision for transformation. It started the discussion around the development of network options informed by technical analysis and extensive stakeholder engagement. Advisory input and governance, programming and planning and communication strategies were also developed. Engagement has been extensive to date, with over 180 stakeholders consulted across 13 sessions, including council leaders, elected members, MPs, MSPs, of course, kind of council officers as well. Alison and Fraser have been involved in that. And feedback highlighted strong support for the scale and the ambition of the Clyde Metro, with recurring themes around connectivity, integration and other transport modes and smart ticketing, and the need for an evidence and advocacy basis for the kind of project being taken forward. In terms of Section 5 and kind of Stage 2, moving into the kind of current focus, we're now in that area. We're now kind of running for two years, and this will involve detailed technical and strategic appraisals, environmental and statutory impact assessments, engineering and technical feasibility studies, which is key, and the development of a full programme, full business case. I would just kind of urge members, this is a long-term project. We're not planning to see anything on the ground here over the next 2, 3, 4, even 5 years. I think we're probably closer to 10 years, if not longer. But we're also needing to kind of develop that case for change to make sure the decisions that have been made now are not going to be impacted in the future. As I said before, the first phase is highly technical in nature. It's involving rigorous evaluation aligned with the Scottish Transport Appraisal Guidance and the Treasury's 5-case business model. Includes assessment of equality, health, child wellbeing and socio-economic impacts, and ensuring the programme meets statutory and policy requirements. Paragraph 5 would just highlight that we continue to play as officers an active role in shaping the project, ensuring that local needs, geographical differences and community impacts are considered. And this officers group provides a valuable forum for the collaboration, building a trust and clarity across the councils. In terms of next steps, stakeholder engagement throughout Stage 2 with a public consultation event planned for spring/summer 26, and the overall programme stressing the development of the project, not the actual programme itself, remains on track for completion by early 2027. In terms of the remaining sections, there are no additional employee, financial or other implications, and the consultation is set out as earlier in the report. Turning back to the recommendations, the committee is asked to note the progress of the Clyde Metro Case for the Investment Programme and the contents of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Colin. Questions, Councillor Carol Johnson-Dempsey, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thanks for that report, Colin. I think it's past time that we do get mass transit sorted in this region, so I very much welcome the report. It says at 3.1 that Glasgow City Council will be acting as a representative for the whole city region. I've not got any inherent distrust in the City Council, but obviously there'll be times when the city's interests don't always align with the interests of the authorities in the suburban area. You did mention it slightly, but appreciate if you could expand on how South Lanarkshire's interests will be represented throughout the project. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Dempsey, for that question. For those of you that know me, I'm quite vocal at meetings, so I do go along to these meetings and I do make sure that all routes don't lead to Glasgow. And we do have a discussion surrounding, for example, the last meeting was in relation to the kind of Lanarkshire, as I would call it, the Lanarkshire orbital movement. So you're coming through from North Lanarkshire into South, through into East Wren as well. Just making sure that, you know, us connecting through onto the radial routes that will ultimately also go into Glasgow are being supported. So I've got similar colleagues in North Lanarkshire, East and Bartonshire and Renfrewshire all doing the same. So we are involved. We're continuing to make the case. Alison's team's involved as well in terms of kind of just links into Clyde Gateway economic development. So we are making sure that our voices are being heard. To be fair, this is going to be a long-term project. You know, there are corridors being looked at from Hamilton through Cambuslang into Glasgow, from East Kilbride down through the A749 corridor into Rutherglen and into Clyde Gateway. One of the options is also kind of looking through the kind of Fairna Hill area, but these are very, very large search corridors. They could be anything from a new bus to, you know, something more significant, or conversion of heavy rail to light rail as well along these corridors. So we are continuing to be involved. We're now moving into the detailed phase, you know, so lots of the issues that I've raised about it's nice to show on a plan a nice kind of pastel colour corridor. Now we need to get into the detail and actually show can we achieve it? Is the topography correct? Are we going to impact upon local business or local users of that area? So give you that assurance that we are making the case for South Lanarkshire and the wider region. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
To this railway that's going to go from East Kilbride to Rutherglen to Clyde Gateway. That was an interesting concept. Councillor Ralph Barker. Ralph.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for keeping South Lanarkshire represented on this, Colin. But really, at this stage, we don't really know what Metro looks like, do we? It won't affect probably certainly not most of the area of South Lanarkshire. It won't involve a direct link to the Glasgow airport. Will there be any, can we see any disadvantages for South Lanarkshire? You mentioned East Kilbride. Is that separate to the recently electrified railway, or is that something which might take over the railway? But as I say, as you say, we're at a very early stage, but it's, you know, we don't really know what it's going to be like. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Barker, for the question. I would like to think there will be no disadvantages for South Lanarkshire. I would like to think that the whole project will be taken forward and there will be a strong business case made. Any conversions of heavy rail to light rail, we'll have to make sure that we continue the same level of service that we already have in these locations. It could be argued that some of that will free up capacity at Glasgow Central, which might allow us to have additional services on existing lines, including here Myers, which is obviously went through a significant upgrade in recent years. So I don't see any at this stage any significant disadvantages at all, and we'll obviously continue to work with them to minimise them and make sure, as Councillor Dempsey said earlier on, that our interests are being fully considered. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can I move that report?
I'll second it.
That report's approved. Item 19, Strathclyde Regional Bus Strategy. Not exactly unlinked. Recommendations for future delivery of the regional bus network update. Pages 198 to 234. Colin Park again.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a kind of similar theme about kind of transport improvements across the west of Scotland. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the development of the Strathclyde Regional Bus Strategy, SRBS for short, and outline the Council's response to the recent SBT consultation, which has been largely informed by the previously approved position taken last year at the Council's Executive Committee. So members will recall, in terms of Section 2 of the background, at its meeting of the 8th of May 24, you considered a report outlining the Council's position on the SRBS and the wider context of bus reform under the Transport Scotland Act 2019. That legislation introduced new powers for local authorities, including bus service improvement partnerships, franchising models and bus operations. Council bus operations. SBT began developing the SRBS in 2023, starting with a case for change report followed by an options appraisal, and the Council response to the initial consultation was approved by the Executive Committee back in May 25, and that has further helped to shape and inform the current draft strategy and our reply. The draft SRBS published for consultation in early 25 is structured around 3 key chapters: case for change, the bus network we need, and a delivery plan. SPT commissioned independent consultants to gather stakeholders and public feedback. Our council response was submitted on the 29th of May, just in terms of timescales. We obviously couldn't bring it to committee, and that's what we're now doing today. And it was based on the previously approved position of the Executive Committee. And it focused on the kind of following areas: general support for franchising with the need for extensive dialogue with operators and stakeholders, recognition that franchising will require significant public funding, estimated at the time at 45 to 85 million per year and an additional subsidy, emphasis on a robust governance framework with local democratic accountability, clear acknowledgement of operational risks, including capacity and skills within SPT and councils, and support for cross-boundary planning and infrastructure development. We also responded to the consultation section on key risks, including political support, funding, market uncertainty and untested legislation, and our feedback reflected the committee's stance and is calling for more detail on the financial risks and stronger governance positions. We've welcomed the continued engagement with SPT, and we reiterate the importance of South Lanarkshire's continued active involvement in the shaping of the final SRBS. In terms of next steps, SPT are expected to present the final SRBS to its partnership meeting in September, and will continue to engage with that process. In terms of the remaining implications, there are no implications in terms of immediate staffing implications, neither are there for any financial ones. In terms of climate change, sustainability and environmental, clearly improving bus services and increasing patronage supports our sustainable development climate change strategy, and it helps manage the reliance on private vehicles and contributes to our environmental goals. Moving forward and turning back to the recommendation, the committee is asked to note the council response to the SPT consultation submitted on the 29th of May to attach to Appendix 1, and this response reflects the position previously taken. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. This is, again, somewhat of a longer-term project as well. I'm struck by 2 things. One is the continued decline in bus numbers that underlies some of this as well. And the second is that First Bus seem to be deciding their bus route strategies now by reference to AI information, judging by the experience we've recently had with the 14 and 21 bus in our area. That's slightly ominous, I'm bound to say, but it's difficult to argue with AI, isn't it, on these kind of things. Can I move the report? Sorry, I beg your pardon. Ralph Barker.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks again, Colin, for similarly representing South Lanarkshire on these SPT matters. It's going to be difficult to get too much of an advantage out of the changes for the more rural areas of South Lanarkshire, and particularly where a lot of those services are cross-boundary, into Dumfries and Galloway or into Midlothian. The other concern, and it's just a chance to make it here, is SPT's change in operation and cutting out some of the remote rural services where there's not a great passenger usage. Now, that's quite fair in a way, but it does leave communities more and more excluded, if you like, and always remembering it may be relatively few passengers, but they're travelling long distances. And the other really worrying thing is SPT changing the method of operation, which has gone on for 100 years of bus use, in that setting down and picking up between communities where you couldn't possibly have a bus stop every couple of miles. So for whatever reasons now, this people between the main communities cannot use the services, which is reducing usage even more, and it is a concern to the rural communities. Thanks for that.
Do you want to say anything there, Colin?
Thanks, Chair. Just kind of coming back in there, I think clearly, as Councillor said earlier on there, we are continuing to work with SPT. The pressures on the bus network are significant. Patronage and demand, whilst it's kind of recovered slightly since COVID, it's not where it was before. Within rural South Lanarkshire, there are bus services that have been changed kind of sadly on a regular basis, but SPT does have the My Bus initiative, which does cover I think two or three areas, sorry, 2 3 areas within the rural area, so everyone has access to a service. However, is it going to where somebody wants to go to on that particular day, and you have to book it as well. But if there's any particular locations, Councillor Barker, keen to kind of pick up on the point there you mentioned about kind of stopping off in between, you know, established bus stops, I'll happily pick that up with SPT for you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And no other question. Can I move that report?
I'll second it.
That report's approved. Item 20, notification of contracts awarded 10th October 24 to March 25, pages 235 to 242. David Booth to have his moment of glory.
Thank you very much, Chair. This will be the biggest anti-climax of the committee. So this is just, again, a standard report that we bring to this committee, and it's to notify a committee on the contracts awarded, in this case from the 10th of October 2024 to the 31st of March 2025, which are over tenders that are over £50,000. And we're required to bring that to committee and report all those retrospectively, which is a requirement of clauses 21.8 and 22.5 of the standing orders on contracts. Those particular contracts are contained within Appendix 1 of the report, and the committee is asked to note those contracts. Thank you.
Thanks very much. There appear to be no questions on that one. Can I therefore move the report?
I'll second it.
That report is approved. Item 21, urgent business. You'll be delighted to know there's no urgent business. Can I thank the committee members for their stamina? This is an unusually long meeting just after the summer recess. Can I draw the meeting to a close? Thank you very much.